Namaste and welcome to Urban Chatterati. This is Abhinav Prakash. And today I have with me Vikram Sampath once again to discuss the recent attacks and trolling after he made that famous observation in the India Today conclave, basically saying that history should be seen as history, that we need to put facts and evidences before the public rather than giving opinions as such. But that is something which has not gone down well with the eminent historians and their devotees. And we are seeing very aggressive trolling of Vikram Sampath and also of other people like Sanjeev Sanyal on the Twitter. So Vikram, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Abhinav. Always a pleasure speaking to you.
So Vikram, what happened exactly? Why they're after you?
I wish I knew, Abhinav, because this is not something new. I think I've maintained several times that this cancel culture is something that I've been, a victim of for a long time now. You would remember that in 2015, I'd written this piece. It was a very innocuous piece at the height of that award Vapsi drama that was going on in the country. I said, as the Sahitya Academy Award winner myself, why I do not wish to return my award. And I found that a very, very politically motivated campaign. And I wrote that and I forgot all about it. And a few months later was the Bangalore Literature Festival that I had founded, putting a lot of my own money and effort and interest in 2012. And so many of these liberal, writers, eminent ones in the country, took umbrage at that article. And there was this whisper campaign that went across the country saying, oh, this is a right-wing festival. The director of the festival is a fascist, so we should not go and associate with it. And so they did an invitation Vapsi on me. And most of them, and, very eminent journalists, also in the city, they used to put out tweets saying, watch out this space, tomorrow morning, 5 more people are going to withdraw from the festival and so on. And the issue snowballed to such an extent that I had to resign from the festival that I founded. So
if they were turning down the invitation, wasn't that simply good riddance?
No, then, everyone, the platform needs to be neutral. You need to have voices from, all spectrums. One entire spectrum withdraws itself. And then confirmation bias comes in saying, see, we always told you, it's always one ideological tilt which is promoted in the festival. So you exit and then make space for something that you'd want a confirmation for. So I said it's rather, this is not a one-time problem. Year after year, I have to deal with these, very, very visceral kind of attitude. So it's best to just leave it. I think if I'd written in that piece while resigning that, if it is a choice between my freedom of expression as an author, historian, and the roles of a festival director, I'd rather choose the first than the second, just to make a few people happy. So I think these things keep happening. We wrongly, I think, hyphenate left liberal. I think there's nothing liberal about the left, either in India or worldwide. It's always my way or the highway. Anybody who does not conform to your viewpoint is immediately cancelled. And the modus operandi is very, very similar. It's a toolkit, kind of set of things to do. You will discredit the person, you cast aspersions, slanderous campaigns, bring in politics and say, this person must be funded by some political party or some association or whatever else. Without any evidence, you can do anything, and then discredit your work, pull out holes in that. So all of that. So this India Today conclave too, I thought between the two guests, Dr. Tharoor, whom I deeply admire and respect, and me, I think we had a very healthy exchange of ideas. We agreed to disagree, and the respect was mutual. And I really did not see any need for people across the country and even outside to take so much umbrage at some of the things I said, which was, what was it? It was basically that as you said, let's accept the truth as it is. If there have been bloody invasions, if there have been genocides in this country, let's acknowledge that. Let's talk about all parts of the country. India is not just Delhi. So if you need to talk about South India, about Northeast India, let's talk about also stories of valor, of heroism, not with some need to be jingoistic, but also, Dr. Tharoor said history is a tool for nation building. A part of nation building is also respect for your nation and feeling that sense of pride. Otherwise, what nation do you build? So all these elements, but what it was a very, and then of course, discussion on the freedom movement, the idea of India, what it meant from the perspective of Mahatma Gandhi, Nehru, Savarkar, all of them, Ambedkar, the usual discussions. It was a very nice, invigorating kind of a discussion. Little did I know, I should have guessed that this should have happened, because the fort walls were being banged on of entrenched, people for decades. So naturally, the repercussions began.
I think you just made a very important point, that what Shashi Tharoor said, that history writing is a tool of nation building.
Yeah,
I think this is what the Congress party has attempted to do in its delusion that by whitewashing history, we can build a nation.
correct.
And they employed all the left eminent historians, whom I call communist court historians of the Congress. And they have went along falsifying history, making false narratives, justifying bigotry, thinking that, this will heal the wounds of the past. Do you think that that project has now completely failed? We're seeing that from Afghanistan to Bangladesh as of today, the rise in medieval barbarism and bigotry by the Islamists, which is a repeat of what happened in the medieval ages. So do you think that project has completely failed, but these people are not willing to accept it, and they are going after the people who dare to speak the truth?
Yeah, true. I mean, the idea, I mean, what you said is extremely right. We're seeing it right in our neighborhood and in very terrible ways. But then you can attempt to wake up someone who's actually sleeping, not just pretending to sleep. So you close your eyes. When I'm in academia, you've been in academics, so you would know better as to how deeply these ideological strands are entrenched, particularly in the humanities and social sciences and historical studies. And a whole new generation is churned out with the same kind of beliefs, the same kind of trope that is, jargons that are churned out. So it's very difficult for them to, come out of that. And institutionally, there has to be a change, which has sadly not yet happened. Unless that happens, at an institutional and governmental level, a lot of this would continue to fester. But broadly, what were the issues which even I'd raised there, and I've written that extensively elsewhere, of this larger Marxist, leftist, the different schools, which, for a want of a better term, we can call them leftist historiography, a very, very reductionist approach to Indian historiography itself, where everything and the evolution of Indian society itself is seen through the lens of the caste system, and history as class struggle all the time. Almost, denial of the civilizational greatness of India. So it's almost negation of the civilizational greatness of India is like a fashion statement, where India's, greatness or achievements in various fields, philosophical, linguistic, scientific, medicine, alchemy, art, architecture, all this is largely underplayed. Also a denial of the civilizational continuity itself, of the nation, right from the Hindu, Buddhist, Jain, Sikh traditions which emerged from this land, and to set up conflicts between them where none actually exists or there is very little evidence about. And like I mentioned there too, the refusal to accept the darker periods of Indian history. And it could be anything. I mean, if there were some people on Twitter also saying, what about the attacks of some of the Hindu kings on some Buddhist viharas and so on. So please, by all means, please go ahead, mention those. But also, as Will Durant had rightly said, that the Islamic conquest of India was one of the most, bloodiest stories of human history. So the manner in which it was a civilizational wound that was inflicted on us, the desecration of numerous 40,000 to 60,000 is the range of temples that were desecrated, people killed, taken as sex, slaves, the 20 humiliating things that, according to the Hanifite law, that every kafir or a zimmi had to do under the Sultan's regime, the jizya that was paid, all these things, talking about that in the false assumption that it will somehow upset today's social cohesion. And the Muslims of today are not responsible for these invasions or the barbarities, and you don't need to make icons out of these barbarians for Muslims of today. As I mentioned there too, like you have, first of all, this assumption that a Muslim only needs a Muslim icon to look up to is wrong. Secondly, even if you really want that, then you don't have to choose between Muhammad Ghazni and Ghori and Tipu Sultan and Aurangzeb and others. You have enough. You have from Rahim to Kabir to Ras Khan to Shishunal Sharif in my state in Karnataka to APJ Abdul Kalam to Dara Shikoh to so many others who could be from the same community, but icons to emulate. So that is another thing, the Goan Inquisition. There are so many dark chapters, and these are not, it's not with a story of vengeance or reawakening of old wounds, but history gives those spaces where you can, heal those wounds and make peace with it and move on, which I think is very, very pertinent, particularly in modern Indian history. The way the freedom struggle is portrayed, again, as a very simplistic, monochromatic narrative led by one ideology or one party or worse, one family, and not giving due to the numerous other strains of the freedom movement, particularly the armed struggle, the revolutionaries, whose heroic 5 years have passed and we are in our Amrit Mahotsav now. At least now, I think we can make a very dispassionate relook at the past, particularly say the freedom movement, and come out with alternative versions. No one's asking for junking of whatever is there. Let that exist, but let a million flowers bloom, as their own Mao had said. So let there be many, many opinions that flourish rather than the thraldom and the hegemony of just one narrative. And anybody who doesn't come within that circumscription is a renegade and someone who needs to be, slandered on.
Yeah, you just quoted Mao, a million flowers bloom or 1,000 flower bloom, something like that.
Whatever. I mean, the multiplicity of flowers. It was a slogan. And there's an interesting story about it. I mean, this was a bait for the people. So they allowed this period of freedom of expression. Little bit people can express themselves. Then they chose everyone who was divergent from the Maoist doctrine and killed them. Right. So this is what happened. This is what the communists do. And this is what they do when they say, in the classroom, they come and say, let's have free discussion. Then they point out who is not a leftist, who is right leaning. And then your game is up. Correct.
But, you made a very important point that Indian civilization is not studied objectively. Let's remove the greatness part. Let's not say we are going to prove the greatness of India. At least study India objectively. And this is something which extends even to the present. Because I have made this point often in many conferences, in many discussions, Vikram, that even today the Hindu polity is not studied as an entity on its own. So whenever they talk about Hindu politics, development in Hindu society, like the rise of, let's say, BJP, when they talk about, it's always from the prism of the other community. Oh, what about Muslims? Oh, what about Christians? Oh, what about this and that? Why can't you study the internal dynamics of the society on its own merit? Why it has to be validated from the prism of another community? You never go and study Muslim society from the prism of the Hindu community. And this is a blind spot which continues from history to the present study of the Indian polity. And this is why the Savarkar has been turned into a hate figure. Yeah. Because we're seeing Savarkar from the prism of the Muslims. Correct. Not as a continuation of the evolution within the Hindu society, which ultimately led to the rise of Hindutva in the modern era. Correct. Why do you think Savarkar has become such a hate figure? Because he was not always the hate figure.
Yeah. I mean, the answer is in your question that that this whole identification of. Again, someone is going to get upset if we say the truth. Someone is going to feel bad. And so everybody's being seen by this lens. And I think I was reading somewhere that probably the next hit jobs, now that Savarkar has been on the radar, I think the other hit jobs are going to be on Swami Dayanand Saraswati, Maharshi Aurobindo, and Swami Vivekananda too. Because in that long, when we talk of Indian nationalism and so on, so how do we then place, say, a Bankim Chandra Chatterjee and this whole Udghosh of Vande Mataram, which resonated across the country. And truth be told, during the 1905 partition of Bengal, it was like almost like a common cry for both the communities. And the way it inspired people across the subcontinent, even people like Tagore in the Swadeshi movement time, subscribed to a lot of what we would today term as Hindu nationalist viewpoint. Of course, later he got disillusioned with nationalism and went over to universalism and all of that. But then Swami Vivekananda, who stood again for, a strong society which gives back. When we speak of Hindutva and associate it only with Savarkar, that famous story where on the way back, I think from America in the ship, when Swami Vivekananda keeps hearing one of these missionaries making venomous statements about Hindu religion. He keeps hearing him for a long time, and then he goes and holds him by his collar and says, "If you speak like this anymore, I'll throw you into the sea." So that is Hindutva, that is Hinduism in resistance. While we are not going to be the predatory force, we are not going to be the one we cannot be, because it's against the very ethos, civilizational ethos of this religion or this nation to be violent and aggressive. But then that doesn't, prevent us from organizing ourselves or picking up in self-defense, for your own protection, when in the midst of predatory forces, you need to operate. So, and also, Hindutva as Hindu modernism, because all these people, Swami Dayanand Saraswati or Vivekananda or Maharshi Aurobindo or Savarkar and Dr. Hedgewar and others, even Dr. Guru Golwalkar, and all of them stood for one thing of a consolidation of Hindu society. You've written about the Ram Rajya Parishad and the fights with Golwalkar and so on. So where the idea was to dismantle these caste divisions which held Hindu society in thraldom and bring that together. So Hinduism in resistance and also Hindu modernity, the two facets of Hindutva. Obviously, these things unsettle a lot of the existing status quoist, tendencies of many of these people. And so fall guys have to be made. Savarkar is the easiest option because it's very, very evident, clear. You can pin all these labels of today of Islamophobia and this and that on him, while very, very happily ignoring someone like Dr. Ambedkar, whose views on Islam or Muslims, etc., would have been much more virulent than what Savarkar had in his mind. Someone who said this is a civilizational conflict. Divide and rule is not something that the British, introduced. It was a civilizational difference over centuries of cultural, historical, and military conquests and all of that, and that there should be a complete exchange of populations and everybody needs to live separately, happily ever after, was Dr. Ambedkar's prescription. And in fact, to Savarkar's idea that somehow we can all live together despite our theological differences or whatever, or cultural differences, under a common secular constitution, even within the Hindu Rashtra, was something that even Dr. Ambedkar scoffed as being illogical and queer. So all these different strains of nationalism, we take a very, very simplistic approach. And as I said, so Savarkar therefore becomes the very easy fall guy. You put all these accusations. We've just come out of this whole petition business, which has been resurrected. And by the left parties, whose the founder of the CPI, Shripad Dange, wrote almost similar petitions. I will remain your Majesty's most obedient servant, and I have always been very loyal to the crown. I have not done anything which goes against the strain of loyalty and all of this. And today
that is fine. I mean, you're fighting against the British. There's nothing wrong in writing mercy petition, living to fight another day. I see nothing wrong in that. Why do you want Savarkar to die, or even Dange, Mr. Communist, to die? It was a good thing to write a mercy petition, come out.
Correct. And do what you
waste
want.
Your entire life in Kalapani. Right? False heroism.
False equivalence also saying, but Bhagat Singh didn't file a petition. But Bhagat Singh's punishment was to be executed. Now, we don't know if Savarkar was given an execution, would he still have filed a mercy petition or not is anybody's guess. But when he was not, a prisoner cannot choose the punishment that he gets. So he got 50 years of life imprisonment. So instead of rotting there, you write petitions and come out. But as did so many others who did not get the execution.
I don't know, Vikram, from where this false heroism is there in India. After all, Bhagwan Krishna also ran away from the battlefield. He's called Radchod. He's worshipped as Radchod. That's a good strategy to leave the battlefield, come back and fight again. And what Savarkar did was great, because even after he was released, he was under constant surveillance of the British because they feared him and his ideas.
True.
Right? That's the clear thing, that he was the real anti-imperialist, whereas the British were helping the Communist Party throughout the period.
Including
the communists were, what was his name? M.N. Roy.
Roy. There was also
M.N. Roy was dreaming of gathering a Central Asian Muslim army to invade India and whatnot, setting up camps in Tashkent, I think Tashkent or somewhere.
And 1942
give certificates.
And 1942, you had P.C. Joshi, the General Secretary of CPI Politburo, whose, communication, I even quote in my book, the communications with the British government, Reginald Maxwell and others, copious amount of documentation as to how, in return for money, to the party, there would be a lot of, exchange of information about the underground revolutionary movements and also about Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose's activities. Now, and recently...
I think it's changed from P.C. Joshi to Kanhaiya Kumar.
No, recently I'd also tweeted, and I think it was Mr. Gaur, one of the former IB chiefs, in his book, Dharmendra Gaur. He'd mentioned how if someone actually became a stooge of the British took very, very good care of them, because they were important for them. So this very famous Hindi writer, Yashpal, is a character like that, about whom Mr. Dharmendra Gaur writes in his book. And there's a letter that he brings out. Most of these letters were destroyed, but somehow this seemed to have survived, where when the British were leaving India, there's this letter which says he's been a very useful fellow for us. He has provided a lot of information about all these revolutionaries. So we are going away. Please take good care of him. And this man was actually put in jail to save him from the revolutionaries who wanted to kill him. So he was actually put in jail not as a punishment, but as protection. And in jail, the man also got married. And I think he even had a kid there or something. But at least marriage, which prisoner actually has his marriage done in jail under British supervision. And then this man comes out and writes against people like Savarkar and others. And then he's lionized as
eminent writer
with Sahitya Academy Awards and Padma Awards, and he's one of the most eminent writer whose works are, I think, even to this day read in schools. Yes. So eminent writers, eminent historians, as Arun Shauri has very clinically destroyed their modus operandi. I think this is a bane of independent India we are living with, and I'm just the latest victim in this long list of.
So most of these your eminences have the similar kind of background in history.
Correct.
They are the real one who have destroyed India. They're the real one who have undermined India. They are the real one who Dalali of China. I mean, I don't want to name many people, but I've seen in JNU many of these eminent academicians would not allow you to even say Taiwan in the classroom. They would say Chinese Taipei. They were more loyal to China than to India, and they have a history of doing all kind of similar activities against India in the service of either USSR or China. But they are the one now who sit and give certificates that Savarkar was communal, he is fascist, he is anti-national, he is this and that. But my last question to you, Vikram, is Vivekanand has already been branded as a fascist. You read all these books by, I think, Jyotirmay Sharma or other people. So Vivekanand is Hindu supremacist because he says Hinduism is a universal religion. So he's a supremacist. I don't know what that makes other religions, but according to him, Hindus saying that Hinduism is good or it is universal is fascism. Other religions doing the same thing is good, right?
Yes.
What can be done about this intellectual, let's say, coma of the Hindu society specifically? I'm not concerned with the wider society here, but specifically with the Hindu society and also in general, entire Indian society?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Abhinav. I think the thing is, the awareness is coming now. I think it's not we've not come out of the coma yet, but it's not a deep coma as it was before. And one example that comes to mind is when that recent nonsensical charade of that conference that happened, dismantling global Hindutva and all of that. I think the government and even the RSS, etc., though the poster of that was about, taking out through a hammer an RSS worker, the RSS remained very dignifiedly quiet about the whole thing. They didn't comment. But the outrage that came was from common Indians and common Hindus, not only in India, but also in America and so on. So that that awareness, that awakening and this arising that you can't do this to us anymore, thus far and no further. I think that's slowly seeping in. That and independent works, several of us for whom this nation matters more than ideology or party and all of that, who are writing and reclaiming some of these mistakes of the past from these your holy eminences. I think a lot of that which is now seeping in to people's young people, particularly, whether it is Sanjeev Sanyal or Sai Deepak or Harsh Madhusudan and Rajiv and yourself and Hindol and so many people. I think that is a good sign that people are reading all of this and people are gaining knowledge, and social media being such a great equalizer where all these eminences are day in and day out. A true Indology exposes all of them. Anand Ranganathan in the media demolishes all these myths and fake stories. So on different fronts, different people, throwing cannonballs at these impregnable fortress, what was considered impregnable. I think that is what is unsettling them so much. And I'm seeing the same thing. So the same modus operandi that Arun Shourie mentions in his book, is being employed against me currently, where first you doubt, but he's not even a historian. Arey Baba, if you have a PhD in history and you're elected to the Royal Historical Society in the UK, I don't know what else credentials I need to present. But that's history of music. Like history has to be history of something. Now you can't, history of history. It has to be history of art, history of architecture. So I chose music, and my thesis title, somebody had put a screenshot. It says socio-cultural, historical and musicological analysis of the early recordings in India and the advent of the gramophone. That the very title has historical. So, but then still you need to give a justification.
You would not be member of the CPIM or CPI. Na? That's the only thing. That's the credential.
Correct.
To you to be considered to be historian.
And apparently some other worthy was saying, but they're not professional historians. I fail to understand, what is a professional historian? Only someone who works in a university and churns more liars like themselves? Or
no, someone who works in the university and joins the trade union of the left and then goes on the strike every second day. That's the professional historian.
History is my profession. I'm making a livelihood out of my books that I write on history. I don't know what else need to be a professionalism. And then they embarrass themselves by lying now through their teeth. Somebody put all screenshots of some NCRT books, very selectively, some 3 screenshots to say what he said was totally wrong. Now, all you need, all the books, that's why in my counter tweets, I put the links to all the books which can be downloaded freely from the internet, from NCRT site. Anybody with a little brain can read through every chapter. And I brought out some 15 lapses, which actually buttress my claims that I made at the India Today conclave. So they can be exposed from the smallest, coolie of this gang to the biggest, eminences. And the other point, day in and day out, these are the people who talk about Brahminism and the elitist clubs and so on. So what else is this? So in this structure, I'm probably the Dalit who's outside your system. I'm the Eklavya who's not been a part of your cozy club of Politburo historians. So do I have to keep giving away my thumb to you every time? I have to prove my credential as a historian, or will my books or my achievements speak for themselves? Or who are you to that I need to justify it to? But this is a very, 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 when Arun Shourie wrote that seminal book, Eminent Historians, not one thing is factually countered. It's only when you cannot factually counter someone, you start name calling, you start personal slanders, you make all kinds of association. Oh, he must be a BJP stooge. Oh, he must be a Sanghi. I have not even entered the RSS headquarters till date. So I don't know how I can be called a Sanghi. So, but then this is the whole thing that, and as if calling a Sanghi, it's not a terrorist organization, that association with it is something that I need to be very ashamed of, even if I am one. So what? I mean, it is a legitimate body in this country, and anybody who's associated with it and who brings out works of scholarship.
Calling Sanghi and all is simply a proxy of calling you Hindu. They can't abuse you as a Hindu, so they say, oh, you are a Sanghi, you are a this and that. So this is what it is ultimately.
Till now, my caste has not been brought into picture. So I'm sure tomorrow that will also be someone. I'm giving them an open invitation. Please use my caste too, because I wear that also on my sleeve. So you can use that also to attack me. But these ad hominems is something I've been so used to now. I'm like, arey yaar, come out with something innovative. Don't do the same boring things for which it's so predictable. So, but then from decades, their innovation, their intelligence to do something unique or new is not different from Arun Shourie to Sitaram Goyal to all the others who put out another viewpoint. The attacks are very similar. So as I said, I'm a very small fry in this long list of victims. So we'll see. I'm told last week or a couple of days back, Sanjeev Sanya's Wikipedia page was vandalized, and there was a hit job done by him by that leftist rag called Caravan, where they questioned him. They can't question him as an economist, so they say he's not even a trained historian. Why does he write all this? What's his sources? Fine, it's a good critique of someone's work. Fine, but we know Caravan cannot be an objective critic of anything. So I'm told somebody put it out openly on Twitter that currently there are two academicians, somebody in the UK, someone in the US, who are working at doing a hit job on me next. And a lot of money is also being exchanged to write, to do this on Wikipedia, to also write articles starting now. It'll start coming where they'll do all of this, question my credentials, bring out some innocuous thing in my books and say, he's not this is wrong. This is, self-referencing, and this whole peer review business where, I quote you, then you quote me, and then we all form a nice clique of, a cozy club of each one scratching one another's backs. So all of that will be brought out. And so openly I'm saying, I know your game. I know what you're going to do. So it's not going to surprise me or put me down if that's what you think you can achieve, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. We will continue because I think truth is on our side. Yes. And anybody who works for the civilizational greatness and civilizational, utthan of this country, I don't think they need to fear anybody, least of all these people who have the least of intelligence.
Well, I mean, these are the devotees and worshippers of Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb could not do anything about Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj because truth was on his side, justice was on his side. What can these minions do? But on that note, Vikram, thanks a lot for your time. It was a nice discussion. Thanks for speaking up. One mistake that the people who are objective and professional like you, the one mistake you make is that you don't speak up. You don't give back to these people. You don't name call them. These people are frauds. These people are vicious trolls, and they have no credentials whatsoever. But this is a good thing that you have spoken. I think others will also speak up, because there are many people who have been hounded like this. Recently, Shonalika Kaul, she was hounded for writing a simple article, and her article was completely, taken in another direction, and a hit job was done by two trolls based out of Canada or US somewhere in the wire. So people should speak out, and she also hit back because she wrote a counter to that, calling that you people are fraud. You people you can't even comprehend what is written. You can't even read simple English. That what I'm writing, what can I do?
All she was talking about was the concept of a civilizational nation and a nation state, and how right from the Vishnu Puran and everything, Mahabharat, we have a concept of Bharat Varsha, and it's not as if India was born on 26th of January 1950, and it's just the constitution is an inheritor of a long civilizational history. Yeah. So for that, she had to face the flak, and I did compliment her for standing up to the truth.
But thanks a lot once again, Vikram, and thank you, audience, for listening to us. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I know I'm not doing frequent talks as of now because of time constraint, because of other responsibilities, but I'll keep hosting these wonderful discussions with the wonderful people like Vikram. So please subscribe to the channel. Thank you.